evening, everyone. Welcome to the Paulding Chamber-sponsored TSPLOST Forum. Appreciate everyone being here. My name is Don Barber with AT&T Georgia. I'm the Government Affairs Chairman of the Chamber and also Vice Chairman of the Chamber. We're very fortunate tonight to have a distinguished panel, and we also are very fortunate to have back again Terry Lawler, who's the Executive Director of the Regional Business Coalition. We really appreciate Terry being our moderator again tonight, and without further ado, I want to turn it over to Terry. Terry, thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening. On behalf of the Paulding County Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome everyone here tonight. I know you all have taken time from your busy schedule to come and listen to some experts talk about the upcoming election on July the 31st, or if you haven't voted yet, you can also vote early right now. But to make some comments, answer some basic questions, and then obviously later on open the floor up to some questions, some written questions. I have some opening remarks I'd like to make, and then we will get to our panelists so we can get this program going on real quickly. Again, thanks to everyone tonight who has taken time from your busy schedule to be with us to talk about the TSPLOST, also called the Regional Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, and how it will impact your lives and the lives of folks in Paulding County and throughout all of the Northwest Georgia region. As we all know, the referendum will be on both the Republican and Democrat ballot during the upcoming primary election on July the 31st. This is the first time in Georgia history where regions of the state will have the opportunity to decide for themselves how they want to fund transportation improvements in their communities. We have some very knowledgeable experts on our panel tonight to discuss the regional TSPLOST, and they include Bill Steiner, who is Executive Director of the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission, Mayor Boyd Austin here in the city of Dallas, Josh Rowan, who's the Vice President at Jacobs Engineering, Faye DeMassimo, who is the Cobb County Director of Transportation. Along with her is Dan McDuff, who is the Deputy Director of the Cobb Department of Transportation, and Scott Green, who is here from the Paulding County. He's the Director of Transportation here. The format of tonight's event will be for each of our panelists to make a short opening remark, then answer some common questions from me, and then take written questions from the floor. If you have a question you would like to ask, please write it on the postcard that you hopefully received at the door, or if you haven't gotten one, please raise your hand and someone from the staff of the Paulding Chamber will come and give you the card to write your question on. Since some questions may be asked multiple times or in a slightly different version, the Chamber staff will compile the questions so we are able to address as many questions and concerns as possible during the time we have scheduled tonight. Before we begin our program, though, let me take just a few minutes or two to give you some background as to why we are where we are tonight in transportation funding. As most of you know, transportation funding in Georgia relies on the state and federal motor fuel tax receipts. Today's state tax and diesel fuel is at 7.5 cents per gallon and 3% of the average retail price over a 6-month period. The additional 1 cent sales tax on motor fuels goes into the general fund, and the legislature, at least over the last couple of years, has allocated some of those funds, and last year it was roughly $6 million that was added to the transportation funding. Constitutionally, no state motor fuel taxes can be spent on transit services. The federal tax rate is 18.3 cents per gallon on gas and 24.3 cents per gallon on diesel. So if the average retail price of gas is $3 per gallon, the state and federal taxes collected are about 38 cents per gallon. Because today's cars significantly are more efficient than they were even 10 years ago, and because we are driving fewer miles, even though with a higher relative cost of gas, Georgia's motor fuel tax receipts have dropped over the past few years, but have begun to recover slightly. With the continued trend in improved fuel efficiency and less average miles driven, any growth in motor fuel taxes is projected to be minimal. To make matters worse, over 2/3 of today's state gas tax receipts are already allocated for maintenance and paying off highway construction debt, leaving less than 1/3 of all motor fuel taxes receipts for new roads and capacity improvements. Knowing these funding challenges, years ago, the business community began to work with the cities, the counties, the legislature on transportation funding mechanisms to keep Georgia growing and economically competitive. First, the legislature looked at increasing the gas tax, but couldn't get enough votes to pass out of the House. Then about 4 years ago, the legislature decided using a sales tax voted on by the public instead of the gas tax would be the way to address our transportation funding. First, they attempted legislation having a statewide referendum with statewide projects. The legislation did not pass. Then they tried to attempt to allow individual or groups of cities and counties to combine together to levy a sales tax. That legislation didn't pass either. Then the legislature decided 2 years ago to call for a sales tax referendum in the state's 12 federally designated planning districts and have the votes decided on a regional basis with a regional vote. Finally, that legislation was successful in passing and became the regional TSPLOST we are talking about here tonight. Over the past 2 years, the new law required every county commission chairman in the state and a mayor from every county in the state to begin meeting to select regional transportation projects for the public to consider on July 31st. Paulding County resides in the Northwest Georgia region, along with 14 other counties including Bartow, Catoosa, Chattooga, Dade, Fannin, Floyd, Gilmer, Gordon, Haralson, Murray, Pickens, Polk, Walker, and Whitfield counties. With a population of 142,000, Paulding has the largest population of any county in the district. Paulding's representatives on the regional roundtable were Dallas Mayor Boyd Austin and Commission Chairman David Austin. All those 15 county commission chairs and 15 mayors decided which projects will be on the ballot for the public to consider on July 31st. If the voters in the Northwest Georgia region vote for the sales tax, all transportation sales taxes collected for the next 10 years will remain in the Northwest Georgia region, with 75% being allocated to the regional projects and 25% allocated to local projects. Our panelists today will be talking in more detail about these projects and how they will impact the citizens of Paulding County. We've asked each of the panelists to first take up just about 2 to 3 minutes to talk about their roles in the referendum, after which we will ask some basic questions, followed by questions submitted from the audience. Bill, if you don't mind, why don't we start with you?
Thank you very much, Terry.
And could you put the first slide up, please?
Good evening. My name is Bill Steiner, and I am your Executive Director of the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission. Our organization provides planning and economic development services to the 15 counties of Northwest Georgia, as Terry has already mentioned. We convened, organized, and facilitated the meeting of what was called the Regional Transportation Roundtable. Each county had a chairman of the county commissioners and a designated mayor to serve on that committee. Both Commissioner David Austin and Mayor Boyd Austin represented Paulding County. I'll conclude my remarks by saying that it was a wonderful experience working with those 15 counties on this project. They worked together civilly. They gave, they took, they argued, they appeased, and they finally came up with a list of projects each county was acceptable to each county. And I just want to tell you have some excellent leadership here from Paulding County that served on that RTR, and I'm pleased to be here tonight.
Faye, would you like to make some comments, please?
Sure. Some of you may be wondering that it's a Paulding County event, well, what's Cobb County doing here? And probably our presence here tonight demonstrates more than anything else a lot of what the regional transportation referendum statewide is all about. The roads, the bridges, our transit and so forth, those things don't know when they cross a county line. The people who are moving through our commuter flows and so forth, they're trying to get from point A to point B. And so the roadways and bridges and the transportation infrastructure that we need to serve them, in fact, must be coordinated in a much larger picture. Even though we were going through the same project development list that you were in this region, in the Atlanta region, we were also meeting with Scott, coordinating with our other neighbors in our adjoining counties, whether they were in the same region or other regions such as Paulding, to identify common projects. And 3 good examples here are Macklin Road, State Route 360, where we all know that's a huge commuter corridor for Paulding County folks who are traveling through and going to their job destinations in the AM and PM peaks. State Route 6, which is an important freight and just mobility corridor for all of us, Thornton Road. And not only is Paulding, but is Paulding, Cobb, Douglas, and all the way down into Fulton, and then State Route 92. So there were a number of investments that we considered in Cobb that you were also considering in Paulding. We coordinated, made sure that we were talking to each other and that we were planning those investments in a way that would best serve all of our citizens, not only in the Atlanta region, not only in Cobb, but in Paulding in this region as well.
Thanks, Van. We'll get back to some of those comments that you made earlier, especially about the interconnectivity between the counties. We're going to skip over Dan because he's here also to provide some expertise on some questions if they're asked. And Scott, why don't you make an introduction and let everyone know who you are, what you do, as if they don't know.
Thank you. My name is Scott Green. I'm the Paulding County DOT Director. I've been the Director since 2006. And it's been a great pleasure to work in the local government where I can touch and feel and see our projects built. We're fortunate to have our own local SPLOST where we're able to do that. Formerly, I worked 15 years with the state DOT on working on much of Highway 278 out through Rockmart and Highway 27 from Cedartown down through Roopville, y'all know where that is, doing a lot of the widening that we were able to do in the 90s. Unfortunately, the 90s kind of terminated the amount of road projects we've been doing out this way. 1996 was the last project we widened, which was Highway 120 from Cobb County on to Highway 278. And that's the last federal capacity project we've seen in Paulding County. Ever since then, it's pretty much been Band-Aids and duct tape trying to get things done in Paulding County. And so we might seem a little excited about the prospect of having some new funding because our own one penny only takes us so far. But I'd also like to add that with the round table, working with the commission chairman and the city mayors, it was a very good experience to get to know our neighbors and to break down the barriers of understanding how we cross each other's lines. We have citizens passing from the Atlanta region proper through Paulding County going north, back and forth. It's really kind of pointless to say, hey, this is just about Paulding County or what exactly we're getting back for every nickel we put in. We all cross lines, we all contribute, whether we're traveling to the interstate, going to shopping centers in Cobb, or to jobs, as about 3/4 of our citizens do work outside of the county. We are part of the greater metro Atlanta area from that standpoint. We do plan closely with them. But one thing we did kind of unique in our roundtable was to look at the allocation of funds down to the county level in dollars and compare that to the population of each county and to the amount of sales tax generated in each county, so that there was sort of a sense of fairness in some respects of where you fell either between those parameters. Whereas a lot of times we drew up the list to start with and we tried to see what would stick, but not everybody could feel that it was fair. So we came up with a formula, and really my involvement was kind of tracking the cost and keeping everybody informed on where we were as we moved through that. And it actually worked fairly well. And like I said, it was a pleasure being involved with that.
Thanks, Scott. And we're going to obviously get in a little bit more detail a little bit later on some specific questions about it. Josh, could you tell us some of your background and why you're here tonight?
You bet. Good evening. My name is Josh Rowan. I am an engineer with Jacobs Engineering. In a past life, I was a highway contractor. Some self-disclosure, you have a 2-time Georgia Tech dropout in front of you here tonight. I'll tell you that story offline, but have been a Georgia resident for 20 years and have been involved on projects from Valdosta all the way up into Ringgold, and have really seen the benefits through the years of both the Paulding County and the Cobb County SPLOST and the economic development and job creation in both counties. And you'll find that's a real passion of mine is how we get our friends and our neighbors back to work should this thing pass. So I'm taking more of an apolitical approach, because should this pass, I'm going to be the one who's out trying to get folks ready, get the skills geared up to get to work on these jobs. So Thank you for having me tonight.
Thanks, Josh. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm Boyd Austin. I'm mayor of the city of Dallas, a lifelong resident of this county, and my family's been here since the time there wasn't any roads. And for most of the time that I've been mayor, or before the time that I was elected mayor, we've been talking about widening Highway 92, particularly in the south portion below 278, to ease congestion. Shortly after I was elected mayor, I met with folks from the DOT about 15 years ago to talk about widening 61 South from 278 to the middle portion of the county to relieve congestion and provide better access. Here we are 17 years later and nothing is done. I want to preface my remarks by saying that our legislature, for at least the last decade, has kicked the can down the road. And until somebody takes the bull by the horns and recognizes that there is a significant problem in this state, we're never going to be able to compete on a national or regional level. I see some of you in the audience that I know drove to Lockheed and General Motors for years. Roads were kind of cramped then, but now we have 145,000 people in this county. More than 70%, some of them say closer to 80%, of the workforce has to leave this county every day for gainful employment. I've got to go Friday morning to Atlanta and be at ARC at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to have to leave here by 6 o'clock to be on time. I only have to do that occasionally. I feel sorry for those people who have to do that every day. And then there are places all around this county. If you come in on an evening on 278 where it's backed up, or 92 out in the Cedar Crest community, 61 where you try to turn north here in Dallas, we need relief, and we've been promised relief for a long time. I served from 2008 to 2010 as the chair of GMA's, Georgia Municipal Association's Transportation Policy Committee. We worked out a deal with the Association of County Commissioners and had a great plan that we were going to present to the legislature, and they said, hold off, we have something coming. But you know what? They came up with a plan, and as Terry prefaced earlier, it didn't pass. And 2 other iterations didn't pass. And finally, what they said is, we will take this to the regions. And hopefully, if we allow the local officials and the local governments to set the priority list, then maybe we can come up with something that will pass and that the people can buy into. I want to clarify one statement that was made by the Senate Majority Leader a week or so ago, that we need to have a group of engineers study this project list and determine it. Well, they did that 3 years ago, and they flat out rejected it because all of the projects were in Atlanta and none of them were in their districts. So now they've come back and they said, okay, we're going to let you choose by region. And so we have that opportunity. I was elected by the mayors of myself, the mayor of Brazzell, and the mayor of Hiram to represent our county. And each of the other counties elected or selected a mayor from their cities to be on the Transportation Roundtable. We looked at all the projects. We had a list about 3 times as much money as we knew we could raise. And we had to pare that down to the things that we thought were most important on a regional basis that could be built in a 10-year time frame and would not entail a long period of funding. So that's what we did. We gave, and we took. Paulding County in this process will pay about 12% of the taxes in the region. What we get back is about 15%. That's a 25% rate of return on your money, and if you can get that anywhere today, let me know. I've got $1 or $2 I'd like to try to increase. So that's how we came up with the project list, and you see this region is varied. It goes from the mountains down to the urban areas of Paulding, the ex-urban areas of Paulding and Bartow counties. And there are a lot of different needs and a lot of projects that were required. So I think we're going to show the project list, and you should have that in your handout. But these are the projects that the local governments said are most important to us. And so when we talk about projects, and it's important to know that these are projects in this 15-county region, and it has nothing to do with the ARC or the Atlanta region. Our dollars will stay here, and if it passes in our region, the taxes will be collected and stay here. If it doesn't pass in the region next door, they don't get anything. I think there's a mechanism a couple years they could call for another election. But it's very important and vital to us. This is the first thing I've seen in 17 years as mayor that gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform this region. And we have to be competitive in this century. We have to be concerned about moving products, raw materials to the market, and finished products out, and moving people in and out of their jobs, and maintain the quality of life where they can have some real time at home with their families, both in the mornings and in the evenings.
Thank you, Mayor. He covered a lot of stuff right there. As a matter of fact, some of the stuff I was going to ask you later on. But
I've got a
that's
soapbox. So.
You did well. I'm going to ask a couple of questions of our panelists here, and hopefully it will be ones that you all were thinking about too and have some interest in. And again, if you do have some questions you would like, please raise your hand and someone from the chamber staff will come and give you a postcard that you can then, or index card you can write the question on, and then we'll pick it up. But Bill, let me start with you. You know, I've heard some suggestions that instead of having a sales tax, we ought to just increase the gas tax. And I mean, we're all talking about transportation. You know, forgetting legislative history that I and Boyd have both talked about, the mayor talked about, is raising the gas tax really a viable funding option for what we're trying to do here?
No, sir. It's neither politically or economically feasible. Let me explain to you why. First of all, the fair tax is a sales tax. It's the least regressive tax. That's been studied by the federal government for years now. But if you had to increase gasoline taxes to pay for what this 1 cent sales tax would pay for, you'd have to increase gasoline taxes by 25 cents a gallon. Now think about that from the people who are low to moderate, even people that are a little higher than moderate. That's a big burden, particularly when you're traveling to and from work every day, shopping, school, hospital, etc. 25 cents a gallon is a lot of money to a lot of people nowadays. 1 cent sales tax is the fairest way to go.
Thank you. Mayor Officer, I want to talk a little bit more about the project. I'm glad that they put the project list up there. Could you talk a little bit about that? I noticed down there at the bottom we've got the Express Regional Commuter Service. We haven't talked a little bit about that. Could you talk about these projects and how you arrived at it? You kind of talked a little bit about that, but maybe explain a little bit more in detail about all of this. All the folks had to get together to work this out.
Right. We looked at a number of different projects, a lot of things that were important. We asked each city. We asked the business community. We looked at what Cobb County was doing, what Bartow County was doing. We've had an ongoing discussion both with Cobb and Bartow on some work, and on Douglas on 92. So we had some regional partnerships where we looked to determine how we could best connect within the region and move people through those major corridors to get to the work centers and to the business centers in and around the Atlanta region. The one thing I want to say, a lot of people have talked about transit. There are people in Valdosta that think MARTA's going to come to Valdosta. MARTA isn't going anywhere other than where it is today. It is not coming to Paulding County. But we do have an express bus or express buses that leave this county every day. We have about 250 people that ride those buses. They get on at the Movies 278 every morning, takes them downtown and picks them up and brings them back in the evening. That is 129,000 trips. It's 1.5 miles of traffic each way every day if those people aren't riding buses. There is no money left to fund that, and one of our project list items is to keep funding that express bus for those people that ride out of Movies 278. I also know a number of people that go to the railroad offices in Atlanta, and they drive down to Douglas County to Lee Road, and it's the same situation with those buses. But here's the project list. Macklin Road, State Route 360 widening. This will widen Macklin Road in Paulding County to match up with what they're doing in Cobb. It completes the Windy Mac connector. And Cobb has a number of projects. Hopefully their project list will pass, their TSPLOST will pass, that will improve that ride and will move people through to I-75 much faster without being impeded at some of the major intersections. There's been some talk about the advanced traffic management system. And people say, what do you need with a new computer system? Well, I don't know if anybody's like me, but nothing makes me any madder than to pull away from a red light when it turns green and get stopped at the next one, particularly in heavy traffic times. And that's what that advanced traffic management system will do, will allow somebody in the Paulding County Center to monitor the traffic both on 278 and at the intersections at East Paulding Drive and Dallas-Ackworth Highway on 120, so that the traffic can flow and not be impeded and improve the commute time. The State Route 6 Advanced Traffic Management System project, there's some widening projects in there to widen 278, to use some of those turn lanes, complete those turn lanes, to allow the traffic to move faster, more lanes of traffic, and also with the management of the intersections. There are a number of intersection improvements. State Route 61 at Hart Road will be improved. I see somebody lives off of Mustang Drive. State Route 61 at Mustang Drive will be improved for public safety. At Old Villarica and at Paulding County High School and Aiken Drive, at Vernoy Aiken Road, and then at 61 and Wendell Road, widening from there to US 278 to relieve that bottleneck in the mornings and afternoons, particularly for school traffic and in the commuter traffic. It's the widening of 278 from the Bill Fruth Parkway east to the Cobb County line. And it also includes a West Dallas bypass. We look at the problem in East Paulding with 92 on the capacity of 92. But what we need to be focusing on too is our future. And there's already been a plan looked at by the DOT to widen 61. But everybody knows that they cannot go through and tear down historic homes or homes more than 50 years old. So they've got to have an alternate route for 61 north from the red light in Dallas. And one of our projects is a West Dallas bypass that would include the study and the construction. It would help move the through traffic, the truck traffic that travels between I-20 and I-75, between Villarica and Cartersville. And the other thing that's very important to me is public safety. In the tornado back in March, at times when we've had trees to fall or motor vehicle accidents that have blocked the road, there is no other access to the northern part of this county from the city of Dallas. Sometimes you can meander through some of the old roads, but they also may be in the same peril as the major roads. We have no way to get that through traffic around. So those are the projects that are on the project list. There are 13 projects, 13 regional projects at a value of over $164 million out of the $1 billion that's projected to be raised. So this is a boon for Paulding County. And what we did is maybe some of those other projects that did not make the regional list, we'll have 25% of the proceeds of the TSPLOST will come back to the individual governments based on a formula of road miles and population. And that discretionary money will allow us to do some of the other projects were not included on the list. It will allow us to handle things like maintenance and operations and other things that we've not been able to do in the past, or to bank that money for a bigger project, rather than having the DOT come out here and pave a half-a-mile section of a street. It will give us more money than we've ever had the opportunity to have at one time to do big things. And one of our plans in Dallas is that when the development community hit the wall and things slowed down, a lot of these subdivisions were left with just the base layer of asphalt. One of our projects is to look at going in and finishing, topping those streets. There are a lot of homeowners that live in an unfinished subdivision. We didn't have the capital to do it, but this discretionary fund would give us the opportunity to bring those up to the same standards as the rest of our city streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question kind of related to that I was going to ask Scott. I'm going to just jump to Scott right now. If you don't mind, could you talk a little about that discretionary? Could you roll to the next set of slides that is talking about the discretionary funds, since the mayor brought that up?
Sure. I'd be glad to. When we did start the regional list, Mayor Austin mentioned we had about 3 times the amount of projects that would fit in that $1 billion pot. So since we'd already studied and estimated quite a few projects to get to that point, we took a lot of those intersections and went ahead and rolled them right into our discretionary plan. We're not required we were not required by the law to develop a discretionary plan in advance of the vote, but we went ahead and did that. We wanted to give the voters an idea of where we will spend the money. This is one of the most accountable systems I've seen. We don't get to pick federal money down to the county level or the city level. In this case, we're doing that with TSPLOST money. And so we added 13 more intersections to the list using the discretionary funds. We added improvements at 4 of our 5 high schools to the school zones, improving the crossings, the sidewalks, and also the operation of those intersections. We also did put in 2 bridge replacements, our 2 oldest bridges in the county on Highway 381, Old 381, Dallas-Hackworth, Pickett's, and Possum Creeks north of Dallas, are 72 years old. And they're very brittle, and some of y'all might have noticed we had to detour traffic for about a month while we made repairs to that bridge. And that bridge, something could fall off of it. It's not going to be a catastrophic situation, but we'd be forced to do some emergency repairs to keep those bridges together. And unfortunately, the state of the federal funding, those bridges are still 5 to 10 years away if we had waited and submitted through the federal program. So we went ahead and put them on our list, along with some silver Comet Trail connections and some shoulder improvements on some of our secondary roads, particularly near school zones and some of our windier roads, adding a couple feet of asphalt for recovery area. We've got that list up, and we've developed a map that superimposes the regional and the local projects all together on one map, so you can see it in sort of a snapshot how it covers the county. And we, of course, plan these knowing what projects might be funded with federal money. In the future, we left those alone, and then we tried to complement using the local funding to fill the gaps. I think that was it. I'd be glad to explain a little bit more how that fits in. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that's right.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and mention that. That's in one of the handouts I brought with me. The discretionary fund is $43 million that would be allocated to Paulding County, and it is divided again by that mileage and population formula, so it is set by jurisdiction based on the census and on the road miles. Paulding County would receive a large portion of that, $39.8 million, and that's what we've done. We've taken that budget to develop our list. And then the City of Dallas would have $2.5 million, Hiram, $900,000, nearly $1 million, and also City of Braswell, $100,000 to round out that list. And that's some significant money that I know the cities would like to have and could do well with it as well as us.
Right, those figures are over the next 10 years if it's passed by the public, that they can spend, and only on transportation projects, cannot go into the city's general fund or the county's general fund, correct?
That's correct. Now, you can spend money on maintenance or operation type work, but it has to be specific to transportation. It can't be other county services. And, those are our projections. These are based on forecasts. Nobody knows to the penny what we'll receive in 10 years, but we've got to make that budget fit. And also, the state economists have given us the year 1 projections, and we've carried that out further to give us an idea of what to budget to. And that allowed us to plan the whole 10-year program. Thank you.
Josh, we've heard from this referendum that if it passes, it means jobs. And you mentioned in your opening remarks that you're the guy that hires these. I mean, is that just a lot of propaganda, or is this going to create jobs? Has it created jobs in other places where things like this have passed?
Well, I kind of answer that question a couple ways. Big picture down to a very personal story. Wouldn't be a good engineer if I didn't quote a few studies for you. You can research these and back these up. But Brookings Institute has studied some of this, and the Atlanta region, in the past decade, we've lost 3% of our jobs. That's a pretty big deal. And at the same time, we've also lost about 27% of our property value. I moved into the house I'm in now, and just about 27% of that value lost. Another study for you, the Federal Highway Administration estimates that for every $1 billion invested in infrastructure, it generates about 37,000 jobs. Now, I haven't personally hired those 37,000 people, but I have been involved in this industry for about 20 years. Cobb County has had about a $2 billion program, been involved with GDOT. And I'd like you to think of it as a still lake, and we lob a stone in, and the ripples start going out. Some of the comments that are made are construction jobs are low wage, not sustainable. Well, I started my career with one of those low wage, not sustainable jobs. I was climbing down inside catch basins on Interstate 20. You take a saw and you cut the handle off the shovel. I was the guy in the hole cleaning those things out for the Olympics. So, ironically enough, it was the Olympics that got my career started. From there, spent a good bit of time in Cobb County on their TSPLOST. Have seen people come from all walks of life. I've had folks with economics degrees to the best project manager I've ever worked with, barely got out of the 6th grade. Real demand for people with management skills, ability to get things done, and maybe the willingness to get a little bit dirty out there. So the construction jobs itself, you'll see right out of the gate. Along the lines, a couple ripples out, you have businesses, example, equipment suppliers, Caterpillars come here, the mechanics that are involved, the material suppliers, the various vendors that are involved. And I look, as I was driving up on Highway 78 through Hiram, at all that development there, and having known folks who worked on those projects, just the stimulating effect to the economy there, and knowing that those areas don't develop without that infrastructure. So even outside of the construction industry, you start getting into the commercial development, into those types of businesses, and it just continues to ripple out. Back to the construction side, assuming this passes, we'll be improving the roadways. Our friends at AT&T, Georgia Power, Atlanta Gas Light, they're going to have to be relocating their facilities. There are jobs today at Georgia Power. I heard from their CEO at a luncheon that they're looking for 300 welders. So the jobs are actually there now, and this will just further add to that. So I don't believe for a second it's propaganda, because my first job was a result of the Olympics. My next job was a result of a county TSPLOST. So I can argue one case very, very strongly, but having been in the industry and hired hundreds of people over these last few years, just really need good, strong problem-solving skills, a willingness to learn, and the construction industry will open tremendous doors. So there's my plug for my industry, but the jobs are going to be there, and it will ripple into really other areas in our local economy.
Thanks. Faye, I'd like to ask you a question. If the law requires a citizens review panel on all of these projects, could you tell us a little bit about how that works and why that's important that everybody knows about that?
Sure. I think that's actually one of the more important parts of the legislation when it was passed. We all know how important, those of us particularly who work in the public sector know how important public trust is. We know how important transparency in government is. We know that we're entrusted with your tax dollars, and it's very important that you be able to see how that's spent and see the delivery of what you gave it to us to do. So what I wanted to do was just kind of go through exactly what the law says that the citizen review panel will do, so that you can be very clear on what their duties and responsibilities are and feel confident that there in fact is that component of this process. A citizen review panel will be created for each special district in which voters approve the levy of the special district sales tax. It'll be composed of 3 citizen members appointed by the Speaker of Representatives and 2 citizen members appointed by the Lieutenant Governor. So 5 total citizen members in each district. They have to be a resident of their district and so forth. The panel they have to meet regularly every year, meet in regular session for a minimum period of time. The panel shall be charged with the review of the administration of the projects and programs included on the approved investment list. They can make recommendations to and require reports from the Department of Transportation, the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, any agency or instrumentality of the state, any political subdivision of the state, and any agency or instrumentality of each political subdivision as it deems appropriate and necessary. The completion of a project on the investment list, as each project is completed, the panel will annually review the specific project benefits that were identified in the investment list to ascertain the degree to which those benefits have been achieved. And beginning January 1, 2013, and annually thereafter, the panel shall provide a report to the General Assembly of its actions during the previous year. That report is available for public inspection and so forth. So there is a very rigorous process in place of reporting on the projects, the benefits of those projects, and an oversight role, a very proactive oversight role of the projects to ensure that what is promised is delivered.
Great. Scott, let me go back to you on a question. Someone in a recent forum that I was at here made a comment about if Macklin Road, if this region passes the TSPLOST, but the other region where Cobb is, which is Atlanta Regional Commission, doesn't pass the TSPLOST, and we've got a 4-lane for Macklin Road heading east, and it hits the county line. What happens if one passes and one doesn't? Could you clarify that process for us?
Okay, I touched earlier that we have to be careful how we attack some of these projects as far as mixing funds. There's a federal program out there that is good, but unfortunately moving too slow and too underfunded on some of these large projects. And then we have this opportunity to put some local dollars in the form of TIA funds on a project, and essentially we have the effect of forcing delivery of that project within 10 years. And that sounds like a great idea as far as maybe Highway 92 or Macklin Road, some of these projects that have been on the books for a long period of time. But we just didn't generate enough funding through this program to completely take care of either one of those projects alone. So what we did in the case of Macklin Road, and Cobb did also on his side, was to put a portion of the funding in there to sort of leverage it without eating up too much of our share, and then basically mandating that project be delivered by attaching T funds to it. The project is already funded a little bit further out than we would like, and what the T funds would do is just leverage that project. And before the state would accept that leveraging proposal, they had to determine what's the potential if one district didn't pass it or the other one did. They would have to fill the gap. Well, the project's already federally funded. We're only proposing putting about 25% of the funding to guarantee delivery of it. Cobb would have put in more on their side, I believe. Actually, they put more on their side. But basically, that decision was made. They accepted that project. They will build it all the way from Mars Hill, State Route 176, all the way to 120, no matter what happens on either side. If neither side passes it, the program just continues to creep along. I believe it would be built anyway. It's going to be a long ways out. I think the key is to get these projects built in our lifetime, where we can enjoy them.
Faye, do you want to make any comment about anything of that too, since you're on the other side of the Mars Hill Road with him?
No, as Scott said, I mean, we fully coordinated on this and coordinated through, probably many of you have heard that have been tracking this process, that there's a state planning director at the time, Todd Long, who was actually working with us through this process as well, and was able, as Scott pointed out, to look at the kinds of federal funds that are coming into the state and be able to say, where were those leveraging opportunities, particularly on a state route like 360, where the state has a strong vested interest and understands the nature of that segment right there and the kinds of congestion that it causes. And they were able to make that sort of partnership commitment to us to ensure projects like that will move forward.
Great, thank you. Bill, I've got one for you, then I want to go to some of the questions that we've got from the floor here. Some folks say that they won't vote for this because they don't have any trust in their government. What do you say to that?
Well, a lot of cases I can agree with them that the state and the federal government were making these decisions, but it's our local governments that are making these decisions, and they have sat down and they have identified the projects that are important to their communities. Now, what concerns me, if this one penny would go let's say it was a statewide sales tax. And everybody here knows how the system gets political, particularly when you can wield power by being an individual senator, representative, or chairman of this committee, or chairman of that committee. You can make sure your district gets taken care of more so than other districts. This 1 penny sales tax will come back to the Northwest Georgia region. It will come back to every region that votes for it. And the projects that our communities have identified have to be done. That's in the law. They have to be done. There's no manipulating this list any further. These projects will be done if this 1 penny sales tax is passed. So, from my perspective, you don't have to go marching in Atlanta or marching in Washington, D.C. to see if you can get your fair piece of the pie. You're going to get your fair piece of the pie because by the legislation, it requires it. It has to come back to the region.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask some of the questions here, and actually I've got one here that I had actually put down that I want to ask the mayor. I'll jump to that. Let me ask this first one. Josh, will the expansion of the port in Savannah have any impact on Paulding's transportation system?
Yes. Go more than that?
Yeah, a little more than that.
Actually, to back up a little bit, if you're monitoring at all what's happening down in Central America with the Panama Canal, the widening and the super freighters coming through, we're in a race with our East Coast ports for that business. As it stands today, if you combine the economic benefit in Cobb and Paulding, we see about $1.5 billion that results from the port. So the investment that's being proposed in Savannah not only will create jobs down there and stimulate their economy, but don't forget right down the road we have the Norfolk Southern Yard, and there is a lot of product that moves through the southeast. We are the transportation hub. Keep in mind our historical roots. We're the city that shouldn't be. If it weren't for the railroad and terminus being an arbitrarily chosen point, Atlanta wouldn't exist today. The airport being the world's busiest, we are known for transportation. Our transportation assets are our strength, and really we function. What you're seeing now with the port is Georgia's competitiveness. I think the point was well made earlier by Mayor Austin that we're now competing with the rest of the world for businesses. I mentioned Caterpillar earlier. The reason they located in Georgia was access to that port, and we weren't competing with Caterpillar in Illinois. We were competing with Japan, and it's a global. Envision sort of the internet. We have an interconnectedness now globally. Our transportation network's the same way. We have air cargo, we have freight rail, we have transoceanic shipments, and then the piece that ties it together is our highway system. So you will see a lot of benefit from the port. It won't just be a Savannah a benefit that they realize. And you're actually already seeing benefits from the port, pretty significant. So back to my answer, yes.
Mr. Mayor, this is a question that I've heard a lot, and I know you've heard a lot, so let's go on and take care of it. MARTA loses money every year and ridership is down. Why should our tax money go to bail out a failed MARTA system?
Our tax money is not going to MARTA. This region does not have MARTA, will not have MARTA. There's no other way to answer it. I think a lot of people prey on people's fear by bringing up MARTA. MARTA is limited in its taxation area to Fulton and DeKalb County. It's been there since the late 1960s. Again, the only transit component that we have included in our plan is the express bus that leaves every day from Movies 278, takes an average of 250 people into Atlanta, and brings them back in the afternoon. It has no funding left. The General Assembly has failed to fund all of these projects. They have taken away the gas tax. If they would put the money, dedicate the money in that extra penny of gas tax, they could do a lot of work on Georgia roads. And if they would dedicate the money in the aviation fuel tax, they could do all the airport upgrades and repairs in the state of Georgia. But they use that money to fill their budget, and they pass it off that they're spending a lot of money, and it's just not happening. So MARTA will not come here. Just those folks that ride the bus, 1.5 miles of cars every day, each way, is what it amounts to.
Thank you. Faye, Georgia 400 toll was extended past the date taxpayers were told. Why should we trust that this TSPLOST will cease when we are told, I guess?
Two totally different underlying authorities and so forth govern these two projects. Georgia 400 and the toll that was extended on Georgia 400 was able to be done by the governor and the authorities of the state without any referendum or any other legislative action. And in part through some of the agreements with the federal government, Federal Highway Administration, and the State Road and Toll Authority and so forth. But that is not true for the way that this program and this referendum is set up. In order for this referendum to ever be extended, it would require another action of the legislature. It would require another vote of the people.
Right, and to clarify too, that Georgia 400 toll is a toll, not a tax. So
That's
the general
correct.
public didn't, the toll's actually paying, I guess already paid off actually.
That's correct.
Okay. Phil, here's one for you. How many counties in the region must pass the referendum to implement the Paulding projects?
Actually, it's a majority vote of the voters in the 15-county region. So, if we can get them 51% of the vote, 50%, what do you say? 50% one of the people voting in these 15 counties, and the vote will pass. So we could have some counties that vote it down. We could have some counties that approve it. As long as the voter number is 50% plus one, this vote will carry.
Okay. Scott, I've got one here for you. Why isn't Highway 92 on Paulding's regional list?
We gave that a lot of thought, and it is on the ARC list, some of the segments, Douglas and Cobb, and they chose to do that, which we certainly support and appreciate. Our pot of money would not generate enough money to widen even half of Highway 92. And so there'd be one more red line on that map, maybe half of Highway 92, and there would be nothing else on that map if that's what we did. We also have been watching 92 closely as far as the progress that's been made in the last couple of years, and it seems to be moving. It is moving. It's mostly behind the scenes with right-of-way and design activities, but every segment of Highway 92 from Douglasville up to Highway 41 in Cobb is under design activity. If you haven't been up there lately, you might want to know there's a lot of surveying activity, there's a lot of office work going on, and our staff is going to all these meetings to monitor the progress. We felt like that project had been promised again and again and again, and we really didn't want to bail it out, so to speak, by using our entire allotment of T funds. The federal system is a big program. It's good at big mega projects, and we want to leave that to that program. GDOT, I think, is unfairly blamed for some of these projects not moving, but they are knocking it out now, and they're working very hard at it. So we want to leave it alone, and we're able to tackle some of the other projects if this passes.
Great. This one thing, Mayor, would be one for you to answer. I heard that groceries and prescriptions will be taxed also. Is that true?
It is a general tax on those items. It has specific exclusions. It excludes motor fuel taxes, and it excludes the price of a new car above $5,000. So they've made a trade at times on what they would charge the tax on. So the people that benefit the most, the commuters, are not going to be paying on the gas that they buy. The other thing is, Herman Cain has called this the transportation fare tax. It's estimated that anywhere around 40% or more, depending on what region you're in, will be paid from people outside the region, from tourists, visitors, folks that are moving through buying gas, buying food, groceries, motels, things of that nature. They're buying services. So up to 40% of the tax will be paid by non-residents. It also takes the burden off the homeowners and the property owners to make it as fair as possible, and that's what a sales tax is. That's what everybody has talked about being a fair tax. And as Bill said earlier, if you raise the gas tax, as one person in the Tea Party said on TV a couple of weeks ago, it would take a 25-cent per gallon increase in the gas tax to raise this amount of money over a 10-year period. Seems simple to me.
Okay. Josh, this one might fit for you. Are we guaranteed any minimum amount from the tax?
Basically, the way it's set up, there's no guaranteed minimum, but the clock starts ticking in January. So at the point that 10 years expires, or that you collect the projected revenue, it's done. We know we've been through a difficult economy in the past 5 years. Can't project 10 years ahead, but again, just know that at 10 years it's done. When the money's collected, it's done. And the only process to bring it back is to go through the process that we've gone through to get to this point.
And I believe it's true, too, that if you actually reach the estimate that the state economist projected before the 10-year period, then the tax stops when they reach that dollar amount. In hopes, obviously, the economy gets a whole lot better between that.
Correct. If the economy heats up and that tax revenue is collected, say at year number 9, it ends at that point. So that's a good point, Terry.
Scott, this one, you kind of touched on this a little bit. Some folks say that these projects are in the transportation plan anyway. And while that's sort of basically true, what do you say to people that say, why have a TSPLOST if we're going to eventually do this anyway?
Well, a couple reasons. The plan stretches out 30 years. And in the history in the last 15 years or so since the Olympics is that as we move forward and develop the projects in more detail, the costs expand. The cost of construction has grown tremendously since 1990. And the program has grown outside of its boundaries as far as the number of projects in it and the available funding. So the trend is we're having to cut here in the last several rounds of plan reviews we've done over the last 6 years. We've actually had to cut projects out of the program as we move down through time. Along with the things keep getting more expensive. So I really think the summary of this is really the choice is to pay now or pay more later. You actually can get it done now, cheaper. If we kept building after 1996, a lot of these projects would have been done at half the price that they're budgeted at now. So I think there's real cost savings if we're able to take advantage of the economy, competitive prices, and get some of these done.
Yeah, and I know in some of the other counties in the metro area that some of the projects that are on the regional project list, if you went just for the regular federal funding and the state funding, it would be 25 or 30 years before those would ever get done.
That's right, and those projects.
Yeah, maybe.
Highway 92, for example, it's been on the books for 20 years now, and there's no guarantee it has to be delivered by a fixed date, whereas the TSPLOST has a fixed sunset, and you have to deliver the project. I wish we could do that with the federal funding. That would be great.
And one thing I think is important too, if you go back to the slide of the local projects, one more, is just to look at the sheer cost of the projects. That's the federal and state regulations layered in, not including what you have to pay for the properties and the materials and the labor. But you look at intersections that will cost $2.5 million to improve. I think back growing up, we had that kind of money for some of the things. It could have done a whole town. But it is very expensive, and a lot of it is due to the amount of regulation and the federal oversight and all of the things that they put on you. So it's not a cheap process. And as Scott said, that price tag continues to grow with every year that you wait.
I want to jump in.
Go ahead.
The federal program, if y'all are familiar with the IRS tax code, the transportation code makes it look like kindergarten reading. It is some difficult, well-meaning bureaucracy and regulation to protect everything you can imagine, but it does run the cost of projects up, and it makes it very difficult to redesign projects and even take advantage of savings because you're too far along to back up and make improvements in the design. So there are unintended results with some of the regulations that we're dealing with, and that's the history. It's been a lot more expensive here in the last 10 years to get through that process.
A lady sent in two questions here, and Bill, it kind of is an extension of our discussion here. Hopefully you can answer this, and I'm going to put these two questions together. Who's going to control the purse strings and guarantee that Paulding pennies stay in Paulding, and who is doing the audit to make sure that the amount we are told is actually being collected and is true?
Okay, I did put a piece of paper out there that's going to be, I hope, an editorial in all the newspapers starting tomorrow. The way this is set up, the Georgia Department of Transportation is going to have the administrative oversight of the construction, but the money is going to be put in a trust by the State Financing and Investment Commission, which oversees that makes sure the money is put into the region. So if you pick this up, it's 2 pages, explains the whole piece of legislation.
And the other point too is Paulding pennies won't just stay in Paulding, but we're going to get 25% more on those pennies. We'll be paying 12% of the tax and getting 15% of the funds in our regional projects.
And boy, can I say that, I think you and I have talked to some county commissioners, and all counties have road budgets for their county roads. I haven't heard this here, but I've heard it in other counties that they're hoping this passes because they're out of road money in their county budgets. And if this doesn't pass, they're looking at increasing millage rates just to take care of those rural county roads in their, some of these rural counties we have. So they're really hoping it passes. I'd rather pay a penny sales tax than have my real estate millage go up. And so I know some of the counties outside of Paulding are looking at that.
And I think I made a comment earlier about the 2/3 of the state sales tax right now goes for operations, maintenance, and paying off bonds. And I think it was Todd Long made the comment to Deputy Commissioner the other day that really what's left of the state funds, they're using it to match with federal, so they really don't have any state funds to do any improvements to the existing state highway system. Just a reality of the fact that the tax rate has not changed since the 1950s.
I mean, look at the fact that the city of Dallas, the city of Hiram, and Paulding County have had to take local funds to cut the right-of-ways on the state highway. There is no money there. And we're doing it to promote business and develop economic incentives to make a good appearance to those people that are coming to see us. And if you ride down the road anywhere, you see what kind of shape we're in as a state on the money situation. And this is a one-time opportunity to have a big impact on the future of this county, this region, and this state.
Faye, let me ask you one more. And if you've got a question, please raise your hand and let the staff, because I've asked almost every question that has been sent up here. And I've got one here about internet taxes. I'll be glad to talk to the person afterwards, but that's not an issue for discussion tonight on the referendum, but I'll be glad to meet with you on that. But Faye, I've heard this, and I've been even in some discussions with it. If the referendum fails, what's next? What happens if it fails, or what happens if it passes? The Plan B debate that's been going on.
Sure. There really is no Plan B. If the referendum doesn't pass, I know one of the things that's been suggested is that in 2 years a different list can be brought back and so forth. And in fact, there's been an analysis that attorneys have done, and the amount that if there were a no vote, and this had to be brought back, the amount of time, because of the current requirements of the law, the current law's requirements, and the assumptions that there's no statewide general primary in 2015, then if it were started again to bring back another referendum with a new list of Plan B or whatever that's unknown at this time, in spring of 2013, the first time that it could be, the question could be put before the voters under the current law is summer of 2016. So we're really talking about 4 years from now, not 2. And there really is no Plan B. And the thing that we do know to be facts, you need to go and vote. Regardless of how you're going to vote, it's just important that everybody think about this. Know the facts, make your decision, make your informed decision, and vote your conscience. But there's some just unchangeable facts, and you've heard them repeated, I think, throughout these presentations tonight. One, the federal dollars are continuing to decline. The state dollars are continuing to decline. And our transportation needs are going to continue to grow. And the need for transportation infrastructure, more than, frankly, just about any other, to support the prosperity of our communities as that economic recovery begins and continues, is going to continue to grow. And so how we're going to be able to ensure that we're ready to take advantage of those opportunities, this is, a measure that could enable us to do that.
Thanks. Y'all can hear me anyway. I've been told that certain corporations, for instance, the trucking industry and farming corporations, have been exempted from paying the TSPLOST tax if it passes. Is this correct? And I'm trying to think who would be the right person to answer these. Josh or Bill? I can answer. I know what the answer is before.
I know that I bumped into a man the other day that works for Yancey Brothers. I've got friends who work for UPS and FedEx. Their companies are encouraging them to go out and vote for it, and be wholeheartedly for it. I see Jamie Gilbert out there, and I don't want to jump the gun, but hopefully we'll have a big announcement this week in Paulding County of a new international company that will locate within near the 278 corridor. And they're here for the logistics and their ability to get close to the Atlanta market. There'll be 200 new jobs. This is a company coming from Europe. We're not competing with Alabama or anybody else. We're competing with the world for it. And if we're going to continue to grow good jobs locally, I know there's some in here that I said earlier about working at Lockheed, that in the boom times of the 40s and the 50s, when Bell Bomber and Lockheed opened, when the Goodyear plant opened in Rockmart, a lot of those opportunities gave people a lifetime of a good income and a good job. Now we're looking at international companies, and we're a player in the international market. The projections keep telling us that in the next 50 years, the ABC triangle, Atlanta, Birmingham, and Chattanooga, you won't be able to distinguish the boundaries between them. And if you've driven out I-20, you'll see that all except for the Talladega National Forest, it's widely developed. So we're going to continue to grow, but the question is, will we continue to be a bedroom community that houses the workers going somewhere else? Or will we develop the transportation systems that allows us to attract the industry so that people have good jobs locally, and that those industries can pay the taxes, the property taxes, and take the burden off the homeowners?
All right, Scott, this will be yours. Any thoughts on straightening and widening Rosedale and removing some of the traffic lights on 278?
I'd be glad to try that. Rosedale is sort of a bypass road to 278. There's very few traffic lights on Rosedale compared to the road through Hiram there. It's sort of the red light alley. It stands out. It's not too different than a lot of metro counties as far as the number of lights, but it particularly stands out in Paulding County. We've done our best to try to get the state to time that, but it's sort of an antiquated timing system. And they're in the process of re-engineering the timing and bringing it up to date, but it's still a rigid system. It's not remotely operated as we intend to do with the T-funds. Part of the review of the widening of 278 would include determining whether all the median breaks are still needed. We think there are some in there that could be eliminated along with the traffic lights associated with them. But it also involves looking at our frontage road connection system and where our alternatives are. Rosedale has some curves in it. It has a lot of truck traffic on it. We've looked at adding some 2-foot shoulders. And I know two particular areas on Rosedale that we've done some design work on, a little bit further out in the next couple of years. One is just east of Metromont, a sharp curve there close to the Eastern Parkway project. And then the intersection of Metromont itself needs a turn lane and some work there. The idea would be, though, if you can improve 278 and along with the Eastern Parkway widening, there won't be so much traffic on Rosedale.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but these discretionary funds could be used for such things as putting a shoulder on the road and making these other improvements, even though it's not necessarily on this list. The local government still has the discretion to use these transportation funds to address that.
Certainly, and there is some shoulder widening budgeted in this program that's not set in stone as far as which road we will put it on.
With that, I don't have any more questions up here. Let's give our panel of experts up here a hand.